Welcome to my channel where I talk about travel, go on the occasional rant, and sometimes try to cook stuff. And today I'm going to try something a little bit different, which is I'm going to do a little book review and share my thoughts on a book that I read, because my New Year's resolution for 2021 was to read one book per month for the whole year. So I also decided alongside this I would do a little review of the book slash like recap, thoughts, whatever. Just kind of see how it goes on the YouTube channel. So this is the first one. Thank you so much for clicking on this video, and if you like it, please be sure to like the video, but also subscribe to my channel for more thoughts, rants, travel, etc, etc, etc. Moving right along here. So today I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on the Da Vinci Code. I'm also going to talk about the movie because I ended up watching it. I am about a decade late to reading this book, more than a decade. I think it came out in like 2003 or something. But my dad lent it to me before I headed out to Barbados, so I read it in 3 days. Oops. It was really good. It sucked me in right away, and I couldn't put it down, which is why I finished it so quickly. Normally I try to kind of prolong a book a little bit, but I just had to know what happened. It's a complex book, but it's not hard to read or follow the story and the clues. Like, it deals with some like historical stuff, religious stuff, cultural stuff, linguistics, like a whole myriad of things, but it never is too difficult to follow, in my opinion. It tells a really interesting story. Basically, there's this symbolist, how do you say that? Symbologist Robert Langdon. He and this lady called Sophie Neveu are trying to solve a riddle, basically, of like, well, a lot of riddles to lead to a hidden thing. I can't say much about the book without giving it away, so I have to speak in code. Pretty much an expert now. Just in general, like, it was a really interesting book. It's very controversial, I guess, because of like, it deals with some religious themes and that kind of thing, and kind of calls into question whether Jesus, and this is kind of like a spoiler, so if you haven't read it yet and plan to, or watch the movie and you haven't yet, just come back to this video a little bit later. It just calls into question like whether Jesus had offspring with Mary Magdalene, and kind of trying to find the Holy Grail, which in this book is basically like the proof that she, like Mary Magdalene, indeed was with Jesus, and they did have a baby, and that their offspring are now alive still. And it's obviously Leonardo da Vinci is a part of this book. It kind of like dives into what he was really trying to portray in his art, allegedly. Like, obviously art is subject to interpretation by each person. So Robert and Sophie are trying to solve this ancient mystery, which basically starts with the death of Sophie's grandfather, who was a member of the Priory of Sion, which is a controversial / alleged secret society. In the front page of the book, it has this, like, I feel like it's almost like a disclaimer, but it says fact. The Priory of Sion, a European secret society founded in 1099, is a real organization. In 1975, Paris's Bibliothèque Nationale discovered parchments known as les dossiers secrets, identifying numerous members of the Priory of Sion, including Sir Isaac Newton, Botticelli, Victor Hugo, and Leonardo da Vinci. The Vatican prelature, known as Opus Dei, is a deeply devout Catholic sect that has been the topic of recent controversy due to reports of brainwashing, coercion, and a dangerous practice known as corporal mortification. Opus Dei has just completed construction of a $47 million national headquarters at 243 Lexington Avenue in New York City. All descriptions of artwork, architecture, documents, and secret rituals in this novel are accurate. I think that's the part that gets people going, because I think they just kind of assume that, like, if people are calling into question whether or not Jesus had a baby with Mary, that, like, they're saying it's true and it did happen. And, like, he's just saying the documents and the art and that kind of thing is, like, legit. Like, he's not proving nor denying whether this happened, you know? But it did cause a lot of controversy, I guess. Like, I was reading some reviews and, like, some critics. Some people just tore this book to shreds. I don't know, just as a laywoman, I really enjoyed it because it was super easy to read and follow, and it was a really compelling story. When I was in university, I took quite a few religious studies courses, and this had nothing to do with my personal religious beliefs, but I just am really interested in, like, why people believe what they do, the history of religion, you know, the theories behind what people believe. Theology, is that what they call it? I should know this because I studied it, but I also graduated in 2015, so anyways, yeah, even there's like controversy about the Priory of Sion and whether or not it actually was formed in 1099, because lots of people believe that it was actually formed in the 1950s. So obviously people like Sir Isaac Newton and Victor Hugo, etc., they couldn't have been a part of it if it was made in the 1950s. But what the heck do I know? Literally nothing. I just like to read. I was like writing my notes, and then I just kind of I had a lot of thoughts. So I might do a lot of reading here. So excuse me for being rude. I'm not trying to not look at the camera. It's just a lot of my brain ended up in this Microsoft Word document, but I want to share it. So whether you believe in the priority of Sion or God or Jesus or whoever, whatever you want to call it, it is an interesting read. You know, I'm not here to debate about religion or history or whatever. I'm just here to ramble on about my usual nonsense and also just share, like, this was an interesting book. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to believe in it. It just was a fascinating read, in my opinion. Made me want to go back to Europe, as the novel takes place in both France and England and deals with a lot of like the historical cathedrals, churches, landmarks, that kind of thing. It starts in the Louvre, so pretty cool. It's fast paced and every single chapter left me hanging, hence why I ended up reading this in like 3 days and I couldn't put the book down. I also really appreciated that all the loose ends ended up being tied up at the end, and there was a pretty big twist, which always a good one. This book comes after Angels and Demons, but you don't have to read them in the same order, just as a side note. I think pretty much everyone knows that, but I'm here a decade late to reading this. So immediately after reading the book, I wanted to watch the movie. I always try to read the books before I watch the movies. I watched it like the day after I read it, so everything was pretty fresh in my mind. And again, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen the movie. Stop watching now, come back once you've watched it or read the book. I felt a little bit like the movie was a cop-out. The movie was decent. I mean, I thought that the chemistry between Robert Langdon and Sophie Neveu in the movie was very like blah. Like, I felt in this book they were kind of like, you know, they were drawn to each other and you could kind of feel it without it being overtly, like, it's not a romance book. There's basically no romance. It's dark. I feel like the movie just didn't even like put a hint of that in, which was a little disappointing. There were parts of the plot of the book that I found intriguing, which were not included in the movie, such as the story of Sophie Neveu's family. They kind of like bullshitted it for the movie, which again, not the end of the world, but like, I just thought it took away from a large part of the book. My biggest pet peeve though was Robert Langdon's character basically ended up being like a devil's advocate in the film, as opposed to seemingly strongly advocate for historical evidence that perhaps Jesus indeed ended up with Mary Magdalene. In the movie, he kept giving all these rebuttals and seeming to question the evidence towards Jesus and Mary Magdalene being an item and having a child. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with questioning things. Everybody should question things. That's how we learn and grow and like make new discoveries and whatnot. But I think what rubbed me the wrong way about this is in the book, he wasn't like this. Like, in the book, he was very much like, hey, these are the facts. Let's look at these riddles and whatever. But in the movie, he was trying to like rebuttal, and I feel like they placed him in the movie as a devil's advocate because of the controversy that the book caused, particularly within the Catholic Church. So I don't know if this was like, you know, maybe this was a coincidence and they just kind of wanted to have like more of a neutral character in there, but I feel like it was to get like more of an audience, which I don't think they had much problem with. I think it was a box office success. Like, it certainly didn't lose money as far as I understood. I don't know, I read on it a little while ago and I didn't put anything in my notes. And yeah, I think I was disappointed because it's okay to be controversial and it's okay to be thought-provoking. And I know there's people out there who might not agree with something but still go and see a movie or read a book. I just feel like they really played it safe with the film, basically, is what I'm saying. Instead of just kind of like diving in and really getting into the story and like, you know, enthralling us like the book enthralled me. They kind of like copped out a bit and they were like, okay, well, let's have the devil's advocate in there so as to not offend anyone. And this was 2006. No one was getting offended yet. I also just think if someone doesn't read something because it might offend them or put their beliefs into question, or because they don't necessarily agree with whatever this book is saying, they could be missing out on understanding another point of view or culture or religion. And to me, it's just missing out. And again, it doesn't have to be that you agree with whatever this particular book is saying, but just having the open-mindedness to learn about another way that people live or another thing that people believe. I read a really good book back in December called Queen Noor. It is about the American woman who I believe was of Jordanian descent. I think her dad came from Jordan initially, but she married the king of Jordan and ended up living there for the rest of her adult life, having kids, etc. She was the queen. It's about the Middle East, the wars that happened in the Middle East, primarily in the 80s and 90s, and just it involves a lot of the Islamic religion. Now, I'm not Islamic, I'm not Jordanian, I've never visited there, but I still really enjoyed this book because it was an opportunity to learn about a different country, a different culture, a different religion, a different political system. Like, it was fascinating, and there was things that I maybe didn't necessarily agree with or believe in, but it was still a great read. I loved reading it and learning about another culture, way of life, language, values, etc., etc., etc. And in the end, it showed me that we are all humans. It made me think, I think most of us mean well and have good intentions, and there are so many different ways that we can approach life, but just because we believe in different gods or no gods at all, it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to know about people. Like, it's one of the amazing parts of the diversity of humanity, and I'm not going to dive super into politics right now, or ever, probably, because no thanks, but I think people are missing out because they are so quick to jump to conclusions and shut down people who disagree with them or who think differently from them, and it's just disappointing. But anyways, that is a little bit off topic. As I was typing, I was like, oh, I'm having all these thoughts. I just want to go off. My main point is just to encourage people to be open to learning about different viewpoints that may differ from your own. The worst that could happen is that you end up expanding your own worldview, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Anyways, next month I was hoping to read Angels and Demons, but I can't read on a tablet. I like the feeling of an actual book in my hands. So I'm going to read the bookshelf, see what I decide on, and then do a review at the end of February, provided I follow through with my goal. Fingers crossed. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like this video if you liked it, and subscribe if you haven't yet. I talk about travel, cook, bake food, go on the occasional rant, do a monthly book review, and that's about it. Have a great day.